And our next speaker is no less august in his history, in his impact, and the things that he does every day to try to make the world a better place through games and gamified concepts. Asi Burak is the co-president of Games for Change, which many of you know as an organization that puts on the Games for Change Festival, which happens in New York in the summer, and also is the organization helping to drive the use of games in many spaces of good. But Asi has, for many years, been a pioneer and a leader in that field. He helped build the Peacemaker game, for example, which is worth checking out, and continues to devote his life to this through his latest project, which is called Half the Sky, that he built, that he's driving with Nick Kristof, which many of you are familiar with and know about this project. And I wanted Asi to come and tell us about the state of this incredibly big and incredibly important work that he's doing in Half the Sky and share some of those lessons from a career of working to change the world. It's my pleasure to introduce Asi Burak.
Thank you, Gabe. So we live in a strange world. We live in a world with 7 billion people that 80% of them live on less than $10 a day. And that means for everything, not only food. More than a third live on less than $2 a day. And we have other people in this world. Do you know who this woman is? Anyone? Yeah, I heard here Kim Kardashian. And Kim Kardashian had a wedding 2 years ago. And these are some of the numbers of the collateral damage of this wedding. 72 days, by the way, there is a trial going on right now, almost $18 million in revenue. The ring alone was $2 million. So you ask me, why do I bother you with those stats and talking about the gap that we see between developing world and people like Kardashian or her fans? And the reason is because I think it's very relevant to us, and we're part of this. And the first bit of wisdom is coming from Dr. Pollack that says that all of us, people that are involved in designing products and services, whether it's digital or non-digital, most of our efforts are done to address 10% of the world's population. So the majority of us. The other wisdom bit I'm taking from Uncle Ben. With great power comes great responsibility. And it's the idea that if we're here celebrating and discussing the power of games and power of digital media, then why not use the power of digital media to make the world a better place? So why not, instead of all our efforts going to 10% of the population, at least some of them, like we saw in Tim's presentation and what I'll talk about next, let's also address the 90% that we're not addressing on a daily basis. The project that, as Gabe mentioned, is Half the Sky. And I feel privileged and lucky to be working on such a project with some of the people that I admire doing some social change work. Half the Sky now is a movement, but it started with a book that I'll mention in a second. It's a movement around empowerment of women and girls around the world. According to Nicholas Kristof, a Pulitzer Prize winner and a New York Times writer, and his wife Cheryl Woodan, this is the biggest moral challenge of this century. So if we talk about slavery, totalitarian regimes in the 20th century, we're talking about the 21st century as the century which we need to solve the issue of women and girls. Because in many countries around the world, 50% of the population is not taking any part. But even worse than that, you're talking about real oppression. You're talking about rape, and you're talking about sex trafficking and acid attacks, and girls that can't go to study, to go to school because there are men that simply will prevent them from doing so. As I mentioned, it started with a book in 2009, and it's a best-selling book. It was the #1 on the New York Times best-selling list, and it brought this issue to the front with the power of storytelling, with narrative. So it's telling the story of great women, and the idea was not only to focus on the very, very tragic cases, but also to show solutions. And by the way, Room to Read that was mentioned before is one of those organizations that is working to make this change by building libraries for women and girls. So the idea was, how do we take a narrative, an arc that goes from oppression to opportunity? Let's talk about the solutions, not only the problems. Next was a TV show, a TV series. And that was broadcasted on a PBS in October, last October. A-list celebrities, Eva Mendes, Olivia Wilde, Gabrielle Union, America Ferrera, George Clooney was introducing the TV series. Not only participating, but actually taking the time and going with Nick Kristof on a trip to 6 different countries around the world and serving almost like eyes for us, fresh eyes, so we can see the reality through their experience. And then Nick Kristof comes to us, and it started just like here, you know, in 2009, Nick spoke at the Games for Change Festival in New York, and he came to us and he said, I want to make a game. Nick, why you want to make a game about something like this? I mean, the book and the TV series are filled with very tough issues, sex trafficking, as I mentioned, domestic violence, rape. How can we make a game around something like that? And Nick had a very compelling and very interesting vision. He said, the reason I want you guys to make a game is because I want to reach beyond the converted. I'm writing in the New York Times, the people that read me are the same people that will turn on PBS and watch the TV series, are the same people that will go to a bookstore and will pick a non-fiction book. I want you guys to reach other people. So the brief was very, very sharp. It was, I want to reach millions of people beyond the people that will care about those issues. One thing we're using to break down a brief like this is what we call the 8-step methodology. I'll only give you a snapshot, but it's something that I'll be happy to speak about more with you, or I can direct you to materials. But the idea is really to think much more than the creative. You know, I speak with many people that come to us, want to make games for social change, and they have this terrific creative idea. And we're always saying, wait, let's step back. What's the strategy? Who is the audience? What's the context of play? Is it something you want people to discover? Is it something that is going to be moderated by an NGO and facilitated? What are the impact objectives? Can you, in one page, articulate what exactly you want to happen through the game experience? And it sounds very obvious, but believe me, 95% of the people that come to us are not really doing that exercise and asking the really tough questions. So gameplay and creative is only number 6 in this process that we're doing. Through that process, we articulated the impact objectives for Off the Sky. And think about it as a funnel, okay? The widest audience that we're going to reach, we said that we're going to do it by raising awareness and getting the issues out there. A smaller percentage will convert from awareness to digital engagement. And we chose Facebook. And even the choice of Facebook was through that exercise I was talking about, the 8-step methodology. Because Facebook is accessible, because more women play Facebook than men, because it is for non-gamers in many cases, because it has social growth and it's great for a social movement, because it has microtransactions. I'll talk about the donations in a second. And the idea was that I'll take some of those that are introduced to the issues and they'll start to spread the word by posting on their Facebook wall and by inviting their friends. And the last portion is turning digital engagement to real-world engagement by doing those donations. And we knew that a very small percentage will get there. But if you look at the funnel, that's exactly what we aimed for. We wanted to reach the widest audience possible, but turn a small percentage into real activists, into hardcore activists that will really make a difference in the real world by donating money. I want to show you a trailer, a 1-minute piece, and then we'll come back when you have the context of how it's looking.
Join the global movement to empower women and girls. Inspired by the #1 New York Times best-selling book, Half the Sky, by journalists Nicholas Kristof and Cheryl Wu Dunn.
And I wanted to galvanize people into action.
And they did. through an acclaimed TV series and now an adventure game on Facebook. Supported by the world's leading organizations, including the Ford Foundation, Zynga.org, and Intel, play a groundbreaking game and make a real-world impact. Recruit your friends and unlock donations such as free books and life-saving surgeries. Give back while having fun.
Because we know it takes a world to bring about this change.
Half the Sky Movement, the game, coming March 4th on Facebook.
So let's talk about the impact. And we're talking about March 4th, so it's like 1.5 months since launch. And as a digital project, it's just the beginning. I'm going to dedicate the second half of my presentation to speak about lessons learned, and not only the good things that happened to us, but also the unexpected, some of the things that didn't go very well. But first, I want to show you the metrics. So we're talking about 1.5 months. We brought 1.5 million people to the page. And by the way, all the numbers are 50,000 players behind because I made the presentation 2 days ago. But we're talking about 1.5 million that go to the page. And in terms of installs, we're talking about 547,000 people that are actually playing the game. And we're talking about the average duration of 15 minutes or so. So, and the reason that you see this gap, by the way, it's because it's a Facebook game. And the reason is that only 40% of players are actually accepting what Facebook calls permissions. So if it was a web game, we're talking about 1.5 million players. In terms of donations, in total, 1.5 months, $175,000. Free books given, $91,000. Free surgeries, $60,000 worth. We're talking about surgeries that are called fistula surgeries that can really change the life of a woman. I'm not going to go into the details, which are kind of difficult, but it's really taking a woman from being outcasted in her community to being able to live a normal and even enjoyable life. So these are the numbers since launch. And to me, one of the most interesting things is the reach in terms of demographics and countries. So these are the 5 top countries. 3 of them are Muslim countries. So we have obviously the US, but we also have Egypt and Turkey and Indonesia, and then the Philippines. If you go down the list, you'll see Brazil and Argentina. This is, by the way, something that is amazing about Facebook, is the level of detail you get on a daily basis just watching those stats. Another thing that I want to show is just an example of one testimonial. We get many of those, but this one I love most because it's almost like, we talked about impact objectives, it's almost like this woman put on paper exactly what we wanted to do. She basically saying, I never heard about the game, I never heard about the movement, but I got hooked. And through the game, she got into the movement. And I also like the last sentence talking about, thank you for reaching across the globe into our living rooms. Again, that was the whole purpose of what we did. Let's talk about 3 lessons of what went well and 3 lessons of what didn't go so well. Lesson number 1 is partnerships. This is the list of funders that we got on the project. It took us 3 years to get those funders to support us. And as you see, you have public and private partnerships here. So you have an organization like Intel, and you have Zynga next to the UN Foundation, the Ford Foundation. In terms of NGOs that benefit from the game, so the donations are not going to us. We're directing them to those NGOs. 6 NGOs, Room to Read is one of them. We selected them carefully to answer all the issues that women and girls facing: education, economic empowerment, sex trafficking, Fistula Foundation, we mentioned the surgeries. One that you probably know, this is the organization that Bono started. And the last thing is something that I think was very wise that we did. We brought 2 matching contributors. So you remember the funnel, and you remember that only a small percentage will actually pay from their own pocket and will donate money. We wanted to do something that will change this equation. So we brought 2 matching contributors, Johnson & Johnson and the Pearson Foundation. Each one of them put on the table $250,000. So together, $500,000. This money is triggered by the players of the game. I know that I'm sure that many of you know the free rice model. That's the model that we did. So on top of everything we have, the story and the ability to do direct donations and all the features of the game, there's also this idea. If you play for 30 minutes, you'll trigger a free book and a free surgery for someone else. And you don't have to pay anything for it because those guys are paying. And for some of our players, it's almost like they want to make them pay. They have this hook, they have this motivation. They see Johnson & Johnson on the health meter, and they want to reach the threshold to make them pay for this surgery. So I want to say something else about the partnerships. The idea that it took us a lot to get them together. It was very tough to manage them, but in terms of credibility, in terms of getting multiple voices, in terms of having this coalition that could now go on to a new project and make something sustainable, that was very important for us. Lesson number 2, the commercial level thing. We wanted to do something, and this is, by the way, coming also from the vision of Nick Kristof, that always says, can we sell an NGO, or can we sell a cause the way we sell a toothbrush? The idea that, can we do in the public world, in the public space, the same excellent marketing job that corporations are doing? And because of that, we wanted this game to be in commercial level. We went to Facebook through our connections, and Facebook gave us a list of 6 Facebook developers. We chose one, Freema Studio from Canada, and they made the game. But along the way, Zynga came on board. Zynga is not the developer of the game, but step by step, by proving them that this is a different game, this is a game that is done at a commercial level, we turned them from being a very informal advisory board to, at the end, really take on the project, helping us with analytics and helping us with advice, but most importantly, helping us with distribution. What does it mean, helping us with distribution? What you see here is a Zynga game, and any Zynga game has the same structure. You see the Z-bar, on what they call the Z-bar on top? This is a list of 20 games. What they give us is that small position on that Z-bar. This thing alone drives 15,000 players a day, 15,000 new players a day. And this is something that they gave us, and they don't give any other game like this. Lesson number 3, marketing. This is the idea that we fundraised for marketing. 40 to 50% of the money we raised was dedicated and restricted to do marketing. We had a launch event in New York with celebrities like Olivia Wilde. We had a launch event in LA with California First Lady Maria Shriver. Amazing press, CNN, Piers Morgan, Nick Kristof is talking about again. There was the Today Show as well, and tweets and social media. This is Ben Affleck. We had others like Melinda Gates and Barbara Streisand tweeting about it. And Ben Affleck is tweeting here mere days after he wins the Oscar. And for us, it's more about Half the Sky and women and girls. For us, it's also about the idea that the game could get the support. For Games for Change as an organization, this is what we want to do. We want to prove that you can make a game about a serious issue, just like Ben Affleck can make Argo and win the Oscar. Lesson number 1 on what went wrong, product versus service. Everybody warned us, you are making a Facebook game. Don't invest all your development budget before launch. Do it like 60-40, do it like 70-30. We failed. The temptation to get Zynga feedback and the beta testing feedback and get it into the game was too big. And what we did is, like anyone else that is failing here, we invested most of our efforts in development. And that means that when we launched the game and we got the hundreds of thousands of players like we're getting them now, we have a very limited ability to improve the game, to create more content, and now we're in fundraising mode again. The second lesson on the wrong side, we were late for Facebook. Because it took us so much time to get this off the ground, 3 years, think about what if this game came 2 years ago, when it was at the peak of Facebook, when the Facebook policies were not so harsh in terms of viral growth and spamming. It was another story. Again, it's still a very, very strong platform, but arguably it's not as strong as it was 2 years ago. And the last lesson on the third side, alignment of stakeholders. 1 month, how many of you know the Harlem Shake? 1 month before launch, this is the situation we had. We had very nervous funders, partners, that launch almost didn't happen. They looked at the game, they were scared to death that it deals with such sensitive issues, but it looks like a Disney game, and what will happen, and we needed to almost educate them after the fact. And it took us a lot of effort to get them to this position. Looking back, I would start here. So if I could run this whole project again, we would probably do a kickoff meeting with all the stakeholders and set expectations. Many of those funders and organizations and partners, I'm sure like you have in your own projects, they don't know what games are. They don't play games, they don't know what to expect, and there is an orientation and education that you can do that is pretty simple. And the sooner we could have done it, the better. And what we did was actually chasing ourselves and doing it at the very end. We have many more lessons that we learned on the positive side, on the negative side. We started a series on our blog that we publish all those lessons. There's going to be more than 50 of them. And today we published the second series. Every team member is doing his own 7 and 7. And I invite you all to read them and hopefully learn something for your own efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Asi. Awesome.